Okay, imagine this. You're standing somewhere, maybe metaphorically, maybe literally, and suddenly you recognize everything. That weird chill, that kind of sinking feeling. It's like emotional deja vu. You realize, oh no, I'm back here again in this uncomfortable place. Maybe it's work, right? Like third time this year you took a job and bam, same old issues, same breakdown of trust. It just collapses.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's relationships. You realize you've picked someone again who just, well, they can't quite give you that steady, secure love you actually need. Or maybe it's quieter, just inside your own head. That feeling that, I don't know, everyone secretly dislikes you, or that constant buzz of anxiety, like something awful is about to happen. It's weird, isn't it? We're
Yeah.
built to chase pleasure, good feelings. So why do we keep sort of steering ourselves back towards frustration, towards pain, even towards self-sabotage? Why these dark places?
It really is a huge paradox in how we work. And you're absolutely right. It's not just, bad luck or coincidence. There's actually a term for this in psychology, the repetition compulsion.
Repetition compulsion, okay.
Yeah, and it's this really quite perplexing idea that there's an active force deep down unconscious that's actually driving us back towards these old scenes of pain. And it's doing it with a hidden purpose, a kind of hidden intent.
Hidden intent. That sounds a bit ominous. Like self-sabotage, but with a plan.
Well, yes and no. It feels like sabotage, absolutely. But the goal of our deep dive today is really to unpack the logic behind it. Why does this happen? And maybe more importantly, how understanding it can actually lead to, well, a kind of freedom. Freedom from repeating that pain.
Okay, let's break it down then.
Yeah.
What does this repetition actually look like? You mentioned the sources talk about two main ways it shows up.
That's right. Two broad categories. First, there's repeating negative circumstances. This is often really clear in relationships, like you mentioned. Always ending up with partners who are, say, emotionally unavailable or maybe very distracted, perhaps critical in a familiar way.
Or professionally, maybe. Like starting something great, but then pulling back, not speaking up,
Yep.
somehow spoiling the chance.
Exactly. That's the repeating circumstances pattern. The second way is maybe a bit more subtle because it's internal. It's returning to a negative mood. This is like a default emotional setting, that background hum of panic maybe, high anxiety, or a very specific recurring fear like I'm going to be humiliated or everyone thinks I'm an idiot.
Right, that persistent feeling that something's wrong, even when things look okay on the surface.
Precisely. It's like an emotional groove you keep falling back into, often one that was carved out, a long, long time ago.
But when you hear that, the immediate reaction is probably, hang on, I don't choose this. I hate feeling anxious. I hate picking the wrong partner. It feels forced upon you, not driven from within. How can my own mind be doing this?
That's the absolute core of the puzzle, isn't it? And this is where the psychological insight comes in. The idea from therapists is basically this. Your mind, your unconscious mind, can't truly let go of a really overwhelming negative experience until it's been fully processed, fully understood, and, crucially, mastered in some way.
Mastered. What does that mean in this context?
Think about when the original difficult thing happened. Maybe it was when you were very young, a child.
Yeah.
You were likely powerless, or you couldn't understand it fully, couldn't control it. It was just too much. So your mind flags it as unfinished business. It doesn't get filed away neatly. It stays active, like a program running constantly in the background, still trying to figure it out.
So this repetition compulsion is the mind trying to run the scenario again, like a simulation, trying to get a different outcome or at least understand the original one better.
That's a great way to put it. It's trying to recreate that zone of original difficulty, but maybe in a context where as an adult you might have more resources, more understanding. The hope, unconsciously, is that this time you'll finally grasp it, process the emotion, gain the mastery you couldn't have back then. An unresolved issue just stays alive, emotionally potent until it's acknowledged.
Wow. Okay, so the experiences we keep repeating are the very ones we kind of pushed aside. Didn't fully deal with when they first happened.
Yeah, precisely. The ones left unacknowledged, unprocessed. Your adult life then becomes this sort of rehearsal stage for these old injuries.
That completely changes how you think about the suffering, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not random. It's not punishment. It's more like an emotional conscience, maybe, pushing you back towards where the truth is buried, hoping for eventual release.
Exactly. It's the mind saying, hey, pay attention to this. We need to deal with this truth. These repeating patterns, the anxieties, the relationship troubles, they really are like ghosts. That's a powerful metaphor used in the material. Ghosts that keep showing up.
Manifesting again and again.
Yeah, in new jobs, new relationships, new situations, but they carry the same old feeling, the same core issue. And they won't rest, the ghost won't rest until that original foundational injustice or pain is finally uncovered, looked at, and really worked through.
Okay, so if the mind is trying to solve an old problem,
Oh.
where do we usually find the source of that problem? You mentioned childhood earlier.
Overwhelmingly, yes. The patterns tend to trace back to our early years. And there are a couple of key reasons for that. Firstly, that's when we were forming our core beliefs about ourselves, about others, about how relationships work.
And secondly,
Secondly, as children, we were just least equipped to understand complex adult situations or emotions.
yeah.
We didn't have the words, the concepts, the emotional tools, and we were, pretty much entirely dependent on the adults around us, their moods, their issues, their capabilities. That was our whole world.
So the blueprint for these painful patterns got laid down when we were least able to decode what was actually happening.
Exactly. The emotional logic got set then. Let's make that more concrete. Think about someone who, as an adult, keeps getting involved with partners who are really distracted, maybe emotionally distant.
Hmm.
That pull, that attraction, isn't necessarily because their parent was exactly like that partner. But maybe the feeling is familiar. Perhaps they learned very early on that attention was conditional, or that deep, reliable affection just wasn't available. It wasn't a thing.
So the adult isn't seeking pain consciously. They're seeking what feels familiar, even if familiar means painful.
Precisely. The familiar feels known, maybe even safe in a weird way compared to the unknown. If your internal map says love equals distraction, then someone offering steady, consistent love might feel confusing, unfamiliar, almost threatening.
Okay, and the other example, the internal mood one, like constantly panicking about being humiliated at work.
Mm.
How does that connect back?
Well, maybe as a kid, whenever you tried to assert yourself or showed vulnerability or even just made a mistake, you were met with ridicule or dismissal or maybe harsh criticism.
Oh,
So now, even as a capable adult, when a situation arises that vaguely echoes that dynamic, maybe needing to present an idea or admit an error, your nervous system just defaults. It hits the panic button, that old pathway lights up. Danger, humiliation imminent, retreat, even if the current situation isn't actually that threatening.
it makes sense why you'd need to be really brave then, to look back and maybe reevaluate that childhood narrative, the one where we often say, oh, it's fine, pretty normal.
Absolutely. We have to be willing to accept that maybe things weren't as simple or as fine as our 8-year-old selves needed to believe they were. There might have been complexities, pains, struggles that we just couldn't process back then.
Right.
And, just a quick point here. While childhood is often the source, it's not always. Sometimes really significant traumas or losses later in life, a major betrayal, an accident, a profound grief can also become that unresolved thing the mind keeps circling back to. The mechanism is the same, though. An overwhelming experience demanding resolution.
That's a good clarification. But whether it's childhood or later, if this compulsion is steering us back to the scene of the crime, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
what's it asking us to do there? Just re-experience the pain.
No, not just re-experience it endlessly. It's inviting us to finally pause, to stop running, stop repeating, and instead to mourn.
Mourn, like grieving.
Exactly like grieving. This is really the pathway to freedom, but it's hard work. It requires real dedication. It's not just remembering something bad happened. It's deeper. Think about mourning someone who has died. It takes time, right? You don't just get over it in an afternoon.
No, absolutely not. It comes in waves. Different feelings, different times of day.
Mm-hmm.
It takes ages for the reality to sink in from all angles.
Precisely. And that's what's needed here, too. We need to stop avoiding the original suffering and give ourselves permission and time to really absorb it, to feel the truth of that foundational injustice or loss, to allow ourselves to feel those primal griefs connected to realizing our past or parts of it were not what they should have been or what we needed them to be.
Can you give some examples of those primal griefs? What might someone actually need to mourn?
Sure, it could be mourning the reality of a parent's limitations. For instance, grieving that your mother perhaps just could not handle vulnerability, yours or her own. So every time you were sad or needed comfort, she withdrew or got anxious herself. Mourning that means feeling the sadness for that little child who needed something different, something she couldn't give.
Okay. Or maybe mourning the impact, like realizing that because of those early experiences, maybe you never learned how to trust properly
Right.
or how to assert your needs. And that, in turn, has led to real difficulties, maybe messes in your adult relationships.
Yes. Grieving the consequences, grieving the lost opportunities, the pain caused, the parts of yourself that couldn't develop freely because of those early constraints. It could even be mourning a parent's own struggles, their mental health, their difficult life, not to excuse harm, but to understand the complexity, the sadness of it all. Acknowledging the reality of the injury from all sides.
So it involves the sadness, but also maybe anger that you were let down, and accepting the reality of what happened without minimizing it.
All of that, the anger, the sadness, the acceptance of limitations, the loss of the idealized childhood, the loss of what could have been, it's multifaceted. And yes, it is probably some of the hardest emotional work a person can undertake.
It sounds incredibly difficult. But you said there's a reward if someone actually does this painful work of mourning.
There is a very profound one. The sources are quite clear on this. Once you've truly kept that appointment with the primal griefs, once the unconscious mind is convinced that you have finally understood and absorbed the truth, sufficiently mourned it can, and generally does, relent.
Relent. The compulsion stops.
The compulsion eases. That part of you that was stuck, desperately trying to get your attention, can finally rest. It's like the ghost is finally seen, acknowledged, and can find peace. And then you become free to forge new paths, to plow new tracks in your mind, in your life, that are less burdened by that old fear, that old pain. You've paid the emotional debt, so to speak.
Wow. So the pattern isn't a life sentence.
Not at all. It feels like one when you're stuck in it, but it's actually, strangely, a signpost.
Okay, so let's try and summarize this for everyone listening. This hidden pattern, this repetition of pain, it's not actually a curse. It's more like a compass.
A compass is a great way to think about it. Yeah, pointing insistently towards an unresolved truth, something your deeper mind really needs you to look at.
And the way out isn't just avoiding the difficult situations or people, although that might be necessary sometimes. The real freedom comes from turning inwards, pausing, and finding the courage to actually feel and mourn what was broken or missing way back when.
That's the heart of it. Facing the ghost, absorbing the truth, and allowing the grief. That's what dissolves the compulsion.
So maybe a final thought for people to take away and reflect on.
Yes. Maybe ask yourself this. Looking back over, say, the last 5 years or so, what's the single most recognizable pattern of frustration or pain that seems to keep cropping up for you? Is it a type of relationship? A specific anxiety? A way you sabotage yourself professionally, whatever that recurring theme is? What old unacknowledged hurt, what foundational injustice might that pattern be signaling? What ghost might be waiting for you to finally turn around, see it, and mourn its story so it can finally rest?